Hi, my name is Dr. Felicia. I'm a licensed psychologist. And in today's video, I'm going to be discussing an important mindset that is necessary to help you in recovering from psychological abuse. When I talk about psychological abuse, that can be emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, which I cover often on this channel, as well as any other type of like emotional abuse, fallout from any kind of toxic or unhealthy relationship. Okay, so I'm going to be discussing one mindset that you can use to help you recover from that type of abuse. Something that a lot of people who are abuse survivors struggle with is dealing with the grief and the anger and the fallout about or regarding missed opportunities, things that kind of have passed them by as a result of the abuse. If you think about it, when regardless of wherever you are right now in your recovery, I'm sure that you have looked back at life circumstances, wishing you had reacted perhaps a different way, grieving the losses of certain opportunities that you may have missed or not handled the way you want to. From the perspective of somebody who is recovering, it can be very painful to look at things that you did not have, that you did not receive, that you needed. And a common pitfall is to get stuck in that place. Now, what does getting stuck in that place look like? For somebody, they may focus a lot on not only what they did not receive, but the possible consequences about regarding that. So sometimes people will talk about not learning particular things or not having particular opportunities. And while that may be true, they become very fixated on that and believing that nothing can get better after that. And this is not to like cast judgment on anybody or to say that feelings of hopelessness at times are abnormal and they're going to lead to a horrible outcome. That's not what I'm saying at all. It is normal and expected that sometimes you can feel hopeless, depending on the type of abuse that you went through, the type of circumstances that you have. You may feel like, that moving forward or making kind of any progress and the areas that you have defined as areas that you want to grow in is pretty much going to be impossible. And that's not abnormal. But what I do want to caution against is being stuck in that mindset. Sometimes I've heard this before from people. They'll say something like, I never learned to do that, right? And so there could be a discussion about these are the things that happen, these are the challenges that you have, and then moving forward will require some kind of skill. And the response is, well, I never learned to do that. And so a very important mindset in recovery from abuse is having that lifelong learner mindset, meaning that you don't look at learning as something that just happens once or can only happen during periods of time, but look at learning as something that is important, something that's valuable, and something that is available to you regardless of wherever you are in life. And I found that people who have this lifelong learning mindset tend to do really well in several areas of life, including progressing through the journey of abuse recovery. Just gonna take a minute here. If you have not subscribed already, please take a moment to subscribe. Go ahead and like the video if you're finding this content helpful. Comment and share, please. And what this does is it helps get this information out to other people like you who can find this content beneficial. So if you haven't done so already, please take a moment to like, share, subscribe, and comment. Thank you so much. So going back to what I said about having that lifelong learner mindset, I found that this is just one of several keys that I feel set people apart who end up recovering well from challenging abusive circumstances. And so what does that lifelong learner mindset look like? Like I said before, when someone adopts this mindset, when they have this mindset, they don't look at learning as a one-time thing or something that has limited opportunity. So sometimes when you hear people say, well, I never learned that, what they're in essence saying is that that the opportunity to learn something or that window of opportunity to learn has now passed, and nothing can be done about it, or it'll be too difficult to make any changes. And people that think that way, and it's okay to have like brief moments of time like that, or, even just feeling overwhelmed by the prospect of learning things. But if you are continually stuck in this mindset of learning is not possible because I didn't learn this, I didn't receive this, then you're just going to be stuck, unfortunately. And that's just going to make the not only the process of recovery more challenging, but it also makes it very difficult to learn from what happened in the past, because you're in this mindset of, I can't learn, it's too hard, it's too late. In contrast, the lifelong learner mindset looks at learning as something that there's always an opportunity to learn. Learning is always available to me. And so think about, well, what I'm going to talk about more in this video is that how can you adopt that lifelong learner mindset, and what does that look like in some concrete steps? So what I'd like for you to do is to just think about or not an opportunity, but an experience where you learned something that you were never taught, right? And this happens to us all the time. Like, our brains are meant to or wired to pick up information from our environment, synthesize it into action. And so whether you even realize it or not, you probably are learning so many things, and things that you have never been taught. And so take a moment to think about something you've learned that you were never taught. And the reason this is important is because it proves that you don't have to be explicitly taught something, especially in childhood or in your formative years, to be able to put something into practice, okay? The second thing I want you to ask yourself is, what do you want to learn? As you are going through the process of recovery, and that process is going to look different for different people. Maybe you're in therapy, maybe you're reading some books, maybe you're just processing the events of the past with some other people. What is it specifically that you want to learn? So take a minute to identify something you want to learn. And once you've identified that, write it down. Get a pen and paper, write it down, or just type it up in your phone. This is something I want to learn. It could be a new habit. It could be a different, it could be like a psychological skill, so many things. So just think about one thing that you want to learn. And the reason why it's important to do that, I'm just going to add a little aside here, is that when we think about recovery from abuse, it's not only learning certain things, but also unlearning certain destructive patterns and behaviors and things like that. So you may find your mind wandering to something you want to unlearn, and that's fine, but I want you to frame it positively into something that is actionable. This is something I want to learn, right? And so for somebody, they may say, well, I want to unlearn repressing my emotions, right? And so to frame that in a positive, action-oriented way, you would say, I want to learn to identify and express my emotions in healthier ways, right? Or just, something like that. Identify an emotion, express an emotion. Then the next step is identify why you want to learn this. Another mindset, or another positive correlation with having a lifelong learner mindset, is that when you identify things that you want to learn, when you're always in the process of learning, you realize that you are not a static being, but you are a dynamic and changing person. And so oftentimes people that like to learn also like change. And when I say change, it doesn't mean, unexpected, stressful changes, but they are very comfortable with, and they like the idea that as a human being, that they're learning and changing over time, that they're not just this static person, or this person that has a way of thinking and that'll never change, right? And so when you identify why you want to learn something, you are also identifying things about yourself that you would like to change. So if you go back to the example of emotional repression, and someone says, well, I want to be able to identify and respond to emotions in a healthier way, they are admitting to themselves that, hey, this is an area of my life that I would like to do better in. And that's another thing that happens as we recover from abuse. We become more psychologically flexible, right? And we understand that it's not everything is like this black or white way of thinking. So you can love and accept yourself while also identifying parts of yourself that you want to improve and you want to change. Whereas sometimes when people are earlier in the recovery process, or they're still in the throes of abuse, regardless of the type of abuse, they have a more challenging time understanding that we fall on a spectrum in terms of like our strengths and weaknesses. And you don't have to, you can see something about yourself that you want to change without saying that you are a bad person. So that is that psychological flexibility, and that that emotional maturity and things like that, that comes along with being a lifelong learner. And so I talked about a couple of things. I talked about deciding what you want to learn and deciding why you want to learn it. And then the last step I would encourage you to do is to think about, like, if you just close your eyes and imagine the future, right? And imagine that, okay, I've already learned all these things, and now you're going to teach somebody this same skill. They say, well, I want to learn this too. What is one small step that you would ask that person to take, right? And so let's say that you are at a point now where you feel really comfortable with identifying your emotions and responding to them in a positive way. Now, someone comes and says, well, what do I do? Because I want to learn this skill too. What's one small step you would have them take, and a small actionable step, right? You wouldn't just tell them, well, you need to go to therapy and you need to exercise more and you need to do, a list of 20 things. You'd probably start out by telling them one small thing that they could do. So think about that. Maybe in this case for this person, you might tell them, well, get a journal and just start writing down each time you think, that maybe you have an uncomfortable feeling or an uncomfortable sensation, and just journal it, just write it down. This happened at whatever time, PM or AM, and list the circumstances around it. So you might tell them your first small step is journaling, right? So think about that for yourself. Now I want you to take, take that small step and start putting that into action. Okay, so I'm going to go over these again. The first thing that you want to do when you're taking on this lifelong learner mindset is to identify something that you want to learn in a positive way, right? So I talked about how when we recover from abuse, we also need to unlearn certain things, but I don't want you to phrase it in terms of I want to unlearn this or stop doing this, but something you want to start doing, start incorporating. So number one, list what you want to do in positive terms. Number two, identify why you want to do this. Why is it important to you to learn this lesson at this time? And the third thing you want to do is to imagine that you've already learned this and you're teaching this to someone else now. And what is the first small step that you would tell them to take? And then go ahead and take that step for yourself. Okay, so I hope this information has been helpful to you. I'd also love to hear from you in the comment section as well. What are some skills and some different concepts that you would like to learn as you recover? Do you identify as someone who is a lifelong learner? And again, this isn't something that you are or you're not. Even though if you find yourself having challenges with wanting to learn, you can take these steps today, right? So I'd love to hear from you. What are some things you'd like to learn? Maybe some things that you have learned that have helped you, and share that information with everyone else, all right? So I hope you have a wonderful day, and may you have a day that is filled with joy and peace. Bye-bye.